Notice this large claw-like mechanism lying on the ground, and these three hung from the cranes. These are hydraulic riveters, which workers used to install most of the 3 million rivets on the Titanic. Here we see the almost complete hulls of both the Olympic and Titanic. Work inside the Olympic progresses rapidly. The staterooms are being erected and plumbing is being fitted throughout the ship. To prepare for the Olympic's launch, workers paint the ship a light gray so it will stand out in black and white photographs, although they repainted the ship black soon after its launch so that it matched previous White Star liners. To ease the slide into the water, the slip was greased with 23 tons of tallow, oil, and soap. And then the order to release the ship was given, the hydraulic triggers were released, and the ship slid into the harbor, reaching a speed of 12.5 knots. Notice that the ship is launched backwards. There are many reasons for this, but among them is at the stern. The rear is wider than the bow, so it is more buoyant. In a mere 62 seconds after launch, the Olympic was afloat. The moment the ship hit the water is its official launch date, although it was mostly empty. Here it weighs only about 27,000 tons and so rides high in the water. The draft, the vertical distance between the bottom of the ship and the surface of the water, is only 18 feet. After it is completely fitted, it will weigh nearly twice that, 52,000 tons. With that additional weight, the Olympic will drop until the water reaches the border painted on the hull, a draft of about 34 feet. The Olympic cannot move by itself, and so a tugboat tows it to the fitting out quay where a gigantic crane loads the ship. Here the crane lifts aboard a cylindrical boiler. The final fitting, including attaching the propellers, is done in dry dock. And then, once everything is in place, the Olympic is ready for the sea. 7 months after this launch, the Titanic was launched. I have from this journal a few photos of that event, but keep in mind the Olympic got the big press because it was first. The Titanic only becomes of more interest in retrospect. This photograph shows the twins, the Olympic and Titanic. Although built side by side, this was the last time they were photographed together. Less than a year after the launch of these two giant ships, one suffered a collision that ripped a gaping hole in its side. That ship was, of course, the Olympic. In September of 1911, the Olympic departed the port of Southampton, England, sailing toward the Isle of Wight. The Olympic turned into the Solent Strait and passed a British warship, the HMS Hawke. The Hawke's commander was surprised by the Olympic's wide turn, but he managed to take a safe position behind and to the right of the Olympic. The Hawke then increased its speed to pass the Olympic, but the Olympic's wake sucked the Hawke inward rapidly. The Hawke tore a large hole in the Olympic, and below its waterline, the damage was even greater. The bow of the Hawke was completely smashed in. The Olympic limped back to Southampton, where the holes were temporarily patched with wood before returning to its home dock in Belfast for repairs. The Olympic's sibling also suffered a traumatic blow that caused it to tragically sink. I'm of course talking about the Britannic. The Britannic was the same size and very similar to the Olympic and Titanic. Although intended to be a passenger liner, the ship was drafted into military service in World War I as a hospital ship. While in the Mediterranean, it hit a mine or was struck by a torpedo and sank in less than an hour. Despite these accidents, the Olympic-class ships were great feats of design and workmanship. Just consider the propulsion system of the Titanic. The ship had 2 sets of reciprocating engines. These engines were fueled by coal, which was stored along the bottom of the ship. Exhaust gases from the boiler discharged through these smokestacks, which are frequently called funnels. Now, they don't look like funnels until you look at them the right way. They're upside-down funnels. This cross-section of the Olympic shows the boilers sitting atop the double bottom. Exhaust from the boilers is funneled up and out of the ship. It's well known that the aftmost funnel on these ships is a dummy. It was built primarily for aesthetic reasons. Although it did not service the boilers, it was used as a ventilation and extraction shaft for the engine and turbine rooms. The Titanic needed 4,000 tons of coal for a transatlantic trip, which took 24 hours to shovel into the bunkers. Here, in this photo of the SS Minnehaha, coal is being loaded into coal ports on the side of the hull. Loading coal into the Titanic worked much the same way. This loading left streaks of coal dust on the hull, and so nearly all ocean liners at the time were painted black to help hide these traces of coal. After the advent of oil-fueled ships, lighter colors became more popular. As the Titanic crossed the Atlantic, 650 tons of coal per day was shoveled into cylindrical boilers where it was burned to produce steam. These boilers were nearly 16 feet in diameter. This picture shows a single boiler. Notice the two workers beside it. The steam was piped to these reciprocating engines. The engines, when viewed from the front of the ship, look like this. The orange is the piston rod, and inside the cylindrical casing is the piston. This worker peering out of this casing gives a sense of the engine's size. Excess steam from these engines was used to drive a turbine engine. This shows the turbine under construction and without its outer casing. Note the workers at the top. This is huge. If you look closely, you can see that the turbine is made of hundreds of individual blades. A shaft transfers power from the engines to the propellers. The ones on the left and the right were powered by the reciprocating engines, and each propeller weighed 38 tons, while the central propeller was powered by the turbine engine. It was cast as a single piece of manganese bronze and weighed 22 tons. The outer propellers were used for tight navigation of harbors, while the central propeller was used only in open seas. Also, unlike the others,